Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of you here today. So I chose this theme because our national organization suggested it. And they always send an email out with what they think would be a great idea to do on any given Sunday with some great ideas. And so they chose the theme of holy boldness, having a fire in our soul. And my process is when I pick a theme to just kind of percolate on it, and sometimes I'll search in the internet or look through my books or just have ideas come into me that eventually coalesce into a speech. And that didn't work for me this time. I had pretty much a blank slate going until Thursday. And it wasn't until my cat became very demanding with meows and wandering between my feet that she said, "It is time for you to pay attention to me, Mother." And so I laid on the bed to have some cuddle time with my cat. And it was during that time with her peaceful meows in my head that finally this talk convalesced inside my head. And it dawned on me, I had been spending a lot of time the past 2 weeks with this really neat headset I've got that even works in the pool, listening to my books on tape. And having that in my ear all the time was wonderfully entertaining, but it didn't really give much room for God to speak to me. So our philosophy believes that God is not some external heavenly Father beaming down towards us, that God lives within each one of us. And I know that God does not speak to me very often with a burning bush. That is certainly a way of communicating. But normally I hear God when I am quiet and when I'm listening. And so this was a lovely reminder to me of the power of that quiet time. One thing I did know that I wanted to share with you was an amazing video that I watched on Facebook by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And if anybody isn't familiar with him, he is an astrophysicist and one of the leading scientists of our world. And there's several versions of it. He must like telling the story because it was many different interviews where he told this story that scientists discovered back in the 80s as they're figuring out the process of how this universe was created, that most of the atoms that are found in the human body were actually created within stars. So carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and all those wonderful things that make up us found their existence within stars. And part of a star's process of life, as they are creating these atoms, eventually the star dies and explodes and sends forth those atoms throughout the universe. And through a process that's way more complicated than I totally understand, over way more time than I can totally understand, those atoms convalesced into this planet Earth. It eventually became life. It eventually became you and I. And so quite literally, we are made of stardust. And that is a wonderful thought. And I don't know Mr. Tyson's personal beliefs, but he even says in his videos that this is a spiritual message. That we are not alone in this cosmos. We are not islands in this cosmos. That we are the direct descendants of stars. And I loved that thought because I think it relates to this theme of holy boldness, of having a fire in our soul, of remembering the power that is within you comes from the stars above us. But I also wanted to share another story about Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this relates to my child. My child was introduced to him in the 4th grade in a very cruel manner, in their opinion, excuse me. See, in the 4th grade, my daughter, Corey, learned about the solar system and learned about the planets in the solar system. And it was only a few weeks after she learned about one of her favorite planets, Pluto, that tiny little thing floating way far away from us, that Neil deGrasse Tyson was part of the leading membership of a scientific community that formed and decided that Pluto did not deserve to be called a planet. That Pluto was not big enough, it didn't have the right orbit, and it was demoted to a dwarf planet. And turns out it's not the only dwarf planet we have. I don't even remember the names of the other ones. But my daughter was devastated. She had just found out about the glorious planet Pluto, and she could not believe that it had been demoted on her just a few weeks after learning about it. And this ignited a fire in her soul. This ignited a huge amount of passion that she would talk about to anybody who mentioned the word Pluto. It's still triggered today, just in case you're wondering. If you haven't she has some strong feelings about this. And I think that this is a pretty common thing for us to develop strong feelings about things that we perceive as negative, right? The emotions of fear, emotions of hate, emotions of judgment, these all tend to evoke pretty easily this fire in our soul. And there's probably a reason for it throughout our history of evolution. You know, if I was a caveman being stalked by a saber-toothed tiger, it probably served me really well to have a fire in my soul about that saber-toothed tiger, right? But I would like to suggest that it does not serve me to ignite that fire in my soul from negative emotions. And I don't think it's naturally going to happen. I think it's something that has to take my effort and my intention. But I think I am best served, and I think you are best served by igniting a fire in your soul from those positive emotions, those higher vibration emotions like love, like life, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, kindness. Let those emotions ignite the fire in your soul. Let those emotions lead to passion in your life for the things that you do, the words that you speak, the thoughts that you have. And this certainly requires a huge commitment. Like I said, I'm not sure that it happens naturally for us to have a fire in our soul for these positive things. I think it's much easier to get fired up about that car that just cut you off in traffic. Right? But I have a consciousness that I have developed, and I encourage you to develop your consciousness, to have a commitment to grow this ability that might not be instinctive and yet is entirely powerful. So what is a holy boldness? Well, for us, a holy boldness is about nurturing the fire within you. It's a soul-level passion that comes from your partnership with God. And it brings into your life, when you're able to unite yourself with these higher emotions, when you're able to bring this passion, this fire, you are able to feel energy and enthusiasm for life and for what you believe in and what you love. You're able to come from a place of deep inner conviction, to have clarity and commitment, and to bring purpose into your life. For this holy boldness is the faith and that sacred knowledge within us that is the basis of our philosophy. The idea that Spirit is with you right here, right now. The idea that Spirit provides for you whatever you need in any way, shape, or form. The idea that Spirit is all there is, our one and only source. And this is, in fact, the basis of affirmative prayer in our philosophy. For those of you who've been here before, we have a belief that anything is prayer. And our preferred prayer that we like is called affirmative prayer, and we have kind of defined it as 5 basic steps. The first step is about acknowledging God is all there is. And the second step is acknowledging that God is within me, that I united with God. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, suggested that when we lead a prayer, that we talk about those 2 steps until we can feel them in every fiber of our soul. So, simplified, you could start off by saying, God is and I am. And if that's enough for you to know in every fiber of your soul, that can be your prayer. But for most of us, it takes a little bit more talking. And so, when we have a prayer, we usually spend time enunciating and affirming that truth for us. And there's a story that Ernest Holmes tells of an alcoholic coming to him and asking for relief. And Ernest went to the hotel where the alcoholic was, and the two of them sat in prayer all night long to get to that point where they could both feel in every fiber of their soul that truth, that God is all there is, that God is the source of everything. And from that source is infinite potential, that anything can happen. And the story says that it took all night for them both to get to that realization. But by the time they were done with their prayer, that alcoholic never had their desire to drink again. Right? And so that's the fire in the soul that I want you to ignite. That's that holy boldness to be able to do what seems might be impossible, and yet to have faith that with God's help it is possible. For that faith is going to elevate your prayers. That faith is going to allow you to go through life with conviction and acceptance and power. And that's one of the reasons why I have 3 to 4 prayer calls every week. They don't take long. It's like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Sometimes with one person, sometimes with a few people. But I feel the power of saying out loud those affirmations, for reminding myself of that truth, for taking time to step away from the doing of life, to settle into the being, to settle into the knowing, and to affirm God is with me in all times, at all ways. Now this theme, as we've mentioned, is Summer of Love for us. And last Wednesday we had our very first meeting, and I certainly felt the fire in our soul in Wednesday's meeting. I felt the passion that people had in this room for the subject that we were talking about. We set our intentions for what is it that we want for this month. We talked about what does love mean to us, and we connected with each other. And that is certainly a wonderful venue for igniting this fire in your soul. And I want to make sure everyone realizes you don't have to come every Wednesday. You could come one Wednesday a month. You could come whenever it meets you to work. But we would love to have all of your participation on Wednesday, because I think it's a wonderful time to dive deep into this concept of what is love and how do I bring love into my life on a deeper level. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, "Love is the central flame of the universe. Love fires the heart and proclaims the spirit." And I know for myself, I get fired up by things like doing service to the center. It brings me great joy to do things as a practitioner or to help out in any way. I get fired up when I deepen my relationships with people, when I get to learn about who they are on a deeper level, when I have time and opportunity to show my love and gratitude to people in my life. And I get fired up on working on my personal growth and deepening that interconnection and turning around and teaching what I have learned to try to help the next person deepen their own lives. But how do you fire yourself up? How do you get to this point of having holy boldness in your life? Well, the first thing I think is most important is to know who you are, right? To spend time on that inner work, to find your authentic self, to make sure that you know exactly what drives you, exactly what's important to you. Not what your family taught you, not what you've learned in the business world, but what in your heart of hearts is right for you. And to deepen that relationship with those positive feelings, with that love, with that acceptance and gratitude. Another way that you can really help yourself is by deepening your connection to spirit within you, to listening, to take time to quiet yourself and to listen to that inner voice. One of the sayings that I've heard, and I don't even know who said this, was the idea that the only thing holding us back is ourselves. Right? So taking time to develop that relationship to spirit is another way to build on that holy boldness. I also love that we set our intentions for the summer Wednesday night. And setting your intentions is more than just setting a goal. It's about declaring, what is it that I want from life right here, right now? And as you're setting your intentions, I encourage you to be willing to leave your comfort zone. It is really hard to be bold when you're curled up in a little ball in your safe spot, right? In order to show this holy boldness in life, we have to push at those leading edges, push at the unfamiliar, push at the uncomfortable. And I know part of myself, I have chosen to do that in several ways. One of the ways is I'm scared to death of heights. So over the years, I have made myself bungee jump from 75 feet up. I've made myself zip line across alligators. Yesterday, I made myself walk across a suspension bridge with only a little minor panic attack. So as I push that comfort zone, I make things easier and easier on myself. I enlarge my possibilities, and I make myself a stronger, bolder person. I also encourage you to pay attention to your thoughts. So in our philosophy, we believe that your thinking leads directly to the outcomes in your life. And the first step is setting your intention, and the second step is paying attention. Are you following along with what you have decided is your intention? Are your thoughts in alignment with what outcomes that you want to have? And along with paying attention to my thoughts, I also pay attention to my surroundings. I have found at work there are two gentlemen who are excellent co-workers and care about their job. We're teachers, they care about their students greatly. But when I spend downtime with them, I have noticed that the majority of their talking is about complaining and negativity. And I have found for myself that that does not serve me to hang out with them. They're great people. I don't want to criticize them as people. It just their choice is to focus on what's wrong. And I choose to focus on what's right. So over the years, I have distanced myself from them. And I will certainly, every now and then I vent as much as anybody else. But I have consciously decided that I want to have a positive mind frame as much as possible. That I don't want to focus on the wrong unless I can focus on what I can do to change it. That I want to focus on that positive, and so I'm careful about who I surround myself with. And that includes coworkers, that includes family. Like, I don't have to be around every member of my family. I certainly love my parents and I have a great relationship with them, but I also have heard people who go non-contact with their parents because it's toxic to them. And I certainly support them in doing what they need to do to serve themselves. And as we work through these things, as we focus on ourselves and our relationship with God, as we pay attention to our thoughts, as we bring prayer into our lives, you'll find that this fosters your faith and your trust. You'll find that that increases your courage to be bold, that gives you a sense of persistence, and will help you change your outlook and attitude. And so as you practice this holy boldness, as you embrace the fire in your soul, please remember that you are made of stardust. And please let this light within you share yourself with the world. And thank you for listening.